Good afternoon. I have no announcements, so I'm ready to try and answer some questions if there are any.
I have one.
Yes.
Mike, can you update us on when the department will announce the adultery and fraternization policy revisions?
We are still working that issue, but we hope to do this soon, perhaps as early as tomorrow. And as soon as we have the exact timing, we will ensure that you are notified about when it will be.
You're going to do fraternization separate from adultery?
My expectation is that we will do both of those issues at the same time. And this will complete the three initiatives that Secretary Cohen announced a little over a year ago on the 7th of June, 1997.
The Commandant of the Marine Corps has been very outspoken, unusually so, about the proposed changes in the adultery policy. Is the Secretary at all uncomfortable with the Commandant being so outspoken on an issue in public like that?
Well, I think you've probably heard the Secretary comment publicly on several occasions, more on the point of the way the issue is being reported in news reports. The important points that he has made over the last 10 days or so is the same point he made over a year ago, and that was that with regard to adultery, he asked for no change in the statute that governs that particular issue, and in fact, he has said on several occasions over the last 10 days that there will be no change in the law that governs adultery. I think that any of you could go to the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which is the law that governs the United States military personnel, and you could look at the article covering adultery, which I believe is Article 134, and look at how that is stated. And it has to do with the effect that that adultery has on good order and discipline, and whether it tends to bring discredit upon the service. And those are the two punishable offenses that occur in that context. And we will have, as I say, when this all comes out, we will add to your understanding of that issue. But what Secretary Cohen said over a year ago was that he hoped to clarify the application of the Uniform Code of Military Justice and to provide some very clear guidance to military commanders and military personnel into how they should proceed when they are confronted with such a case.
But in any case, the Secretary is comfortable with having a service chief speak out in the kind of way when something like this is under discussion internally.
Well, I have not seen him comment on that. I do know that the services have been very closely involved in the evolution of this whole process. You may recall that when this was announced over a year ago, it was the services were very much part of both the good order and discipline part of the issue, and also their JAG representatives and general counsels were also a part of the adultery part of the issue. So this is not something that has been done independent of the services, and my expectation is that when we make the announcement, we will be able to add to your understanding and the understanding of military people about what these issues are all about. Yeah.
Well, Mike, as I understood it, there were proposals to change the UCMJ on adultery. You are now telling us that that is not a current plan.
What I am telling you is what the Secretary has said. I would refer you to the transcript from the media availability that he had a week ago, and you can take a look at the exact words. And then as soon as we have the details of the final package worked out, we'll have a gathering down here, and we'll have a full briefing on the subject.
If I could just sort of understand the parameters a little bit. No change in UCMJ, but a change in the policy of how it is applied or something?
The one thing that he has made clear, and that he started making clear over a year ago, was that there was no change to the Uniform Code of Military Justice, and that remains the case. Yes.
When Mr. Bacon was here last week, he said that it would wait until the Secretary got back from his Asia trip. Any reason why he pushed it up?
Well, I think that...
I'm not complaining, but...
Right. I think that that there are several things that have come into play here. Number one, there continue to be a number of reports on this issue, some of which are not entirely accurate. And I think that the Secretary felt that if we were in a position to provide the final package before he got back, we should go ahead and do that. And so if that is the case, our intention is to indeed have a briefing and provide you all with any paper that has been generated on this subject. Yeah.
The UCMJ is the written law, but then there are JAG instructions, guidances, that sort of thing.
The manual for courts martial.
Right. Okay. Well, but those kind of things that are not the law that is passed by Congress, a change in UCMJ would require an act of Congress, in my understanding. But the administrative processes in the JAG manuals are DoD products, and those can be changed to change the guidance to commanders in how they implement that law. Is that
Well,
what
and
you're
that was always the plan, to look at the manual for courts martial, which provides the explanatory material, and to see if there could be more clarity injected into that. And my indications are at this point that is exactly what has occurred, and that once the final package is assembled, that is what will be provided.
The outside arguments have been about what punishment could accrue to an adultery charge. There's always been, under Article 34, a fairly broad range of what you can do up to the maximum of I think, a dishonorable. But the guidance could come down and recommend what the punishment should be.
That's exactly right. There is the commanders in almost every circumstance where they're confronted with an incident where they have to dispose of some disciplinary matter, have a whole range of possibilities in how they go about that, and they frequently have to consult with legal authorities into how they should proceed, and certainly this issue is one where those kinds of consultations go on. Yes.
Another subject. Any progress on the effort by DoD to create a moratorium over Cyprus? And since Cyprus is not a NATO member and the system is against the Cypriot defense sovereign rights, I'm wondering if DoD is going to protect Cyprus from any attack during the existence of the system.
What I can tell you on that is that the United States believes that some sort of an arrangement regarding the air picture for Cyprus would help to reduce tensions on the island and would contribute to an atmosphere where which would be more conducive to settlement discussions. A regime or an effort in that regard would function with the cooperation of the concerned parties. The United States would not enforce such an arrangement with Cyprus. We've said that before. And of course, our State Department is involved in discussing any kind of arrangement like this, and I would refer you to them for any more details.
Follow up to that. Most recently, U.S. officers cooperated with the British counterparts in the F-S, that means frequency system, stationed on the Cape Greco of the Republic of Cyprus. The system is in place anyway by NATO since 1981 with ACE Directive 20-3 reporting direct to LCO in Izmir, Turkey. Do you have an idea what is going on?
On that one,
cooperation,
on that one, I have nothing, I have no knowledge of anything that you have mentioned there.
I was told also that the DoD is also in touch with the Israelis too for the moratorium over Cyprus. Do you have anything on that?
Well, we've discussed our interests with regard to Cyprus with a number of countries, including Israel.
Your subject.
Yeah.
What have been the consequences, if any, of the delay in Congress appropriating the Bosnian money, number one? And affiliated with that is, do you care if Congress gives the Bosnian money through an emergency appropriation or a supplemental appropriation? Do you care which way it comes to you?
You're asking a rather technical question, at least the second part of it. I'll have to take that one and see if there is concern. With regard to the Bosnia money, I think you're aware that we are very concerned about that supplemental, that we believe that it is important to get, not only because the operations are important and are expending money, but because of the impact or the potential impact that they will, diverting other funds would have on overall readiness.
What I'm really asking for is, we had those dire warnings 2 or 3 months ago that we'd have to start, the Pentagon would have to start diverting money out of O&M and so forth. Has that happened?
Let me take that one and see if that has occurred yet. I just don't have that level of detail. Yeah.
Can you also check in for each of the services how they're affected? Because I guess the Army is going to have cut back training the most because they're most indebted by this or affected by this.
We'll see if we can give you a service breakdown on that. Any more on this one? Yeah.
No. Mike, have you taken a question on China yet? I'm sorry, I was late.
No, I was kind of hoping to get through the brief.
Well,
What,
try this. This is an article in today's Early Bird from the South China Morning Post, reporting that Beijing has reiterated its right to use military force against Taiwan, and it has warned other countries not to sell weapons to the island or to shield Taiwan under defense umbrellas, which seems to be aimed directly at the United States, at least the past policy, and I think it's still the present policy of the United States. How does the United States military react to this very confrontational statement?
I think you're aware of what our policy is with regard to Taiwan, and there is no change in that policy. Yeah.
Linda Tripp, as she finishes her work with the grand jury, is she coming back to resume her old position here at the Pentagon? Is she welcome? Is her desk still available?
I have 2 things that I can tell you about Linda Tripp. The first one is that she remains an employee of the Office of the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Public Affairs. The second one is, from what I read in press accounts, she is scheduled to testify or continue her testimony before the grand jury today. And beyond that, I don't have anything else.
How is she coming on her project that she's been assigned? Has she done anything on that?
I've given you the extent of what I have on Linda Tripp.
Is there a way that the Defense Department could take a question to see whether or not she has written the first word on the project that she has allegedly been working on for the last 9 months?
I'm certainly...
It's not classified. It should be something that's ascertainable.
I'm certainly open to any questions that you care to ask.
But that doesn't mean you're going to seek an answer, is that? That's
I
not
will-
invasion of her privacy.
Go ahead and ask any questions that you care to ask on the subject, and we will do what we can on the subject.
All I want to say is, if she should be convicted of wiretapping in Maryland, if a person is convicted of a state offense, does that impinge on her employment at the Federal Department of Defense?
What, are you asking a very generalized question,
Well,
which
it
I
could be
which I
general, it
would
could be
be
specific. She's
which
been-
I would be willing to take on the effects of employment in the aftermath of some sort of judicial sentence. Is that it?
Well, the specific is obvious. It's that if Maryland should convict her of wiretapping, breaking the law, would that affect her employment? And if you say that that's speculative, I will just ask, does a employee of the Pentagon have any risk if he or she is convicted of a state crime, civil or criminal?
We'll take the question and see if we can add to your understanding with an answer. Yeah.
Just to follow up on Jack's question, to broaden it to a yes or no question, has she produced any work product during the time that she has been on flex time? That has been
I think
seen
I've
by
made
your
it real clear
supervisors?
that I'm very limited in A, my knowledge, and B, what I can provide you on that, but we'll do what we can. Yeah.
Recently, the DoD started monitoring the entire strategic area from Cyprus all the way to the Aegean Sea electronically using various devices in Greece and Turkey. And I'm wondering why now.
Could you repeat that one more time?
Recently, the DoD started monitoring the entire strategic area from Cyprus all the way to the Aegean electronically using various devices in Greece and Turkey. And I'm wondering why now. Is there any specific reason?
I think what you may be referring to is actually a NATO program called the Recognized Air Picture and it actually is focused on the Aegean, as I understand it.
No, this is the RAP system, I know. What I'm saying is something from your country, from the Department of Defense.
Which we are
Yes,
doing
that's
what?
As a DoD.
And what is it that we're doing?
You're monitoring the whole area from Cyprus all the way to the Aegean.
I am not aware of any program that we have separate from the one that NATO has.
I have one on Kosovo. Last week, the DoD Deputy Secretary testified before the International Relations Committee of the House on Kosovo, and inter alia he stated that the U.S. forces are preparing to intervene in Kosovo unilaterally without prior approval of the UN. Could you tell us more about his testimony?
What is happening?
It was a testimony by the Deputy Secretary of Defense in the Congress last Friday.
And what?
And he said inter alia that the U.S. forces are preparing to intervene unilaterally in Kosovo without prior approval of the United Nations.
I am not aware of any.
That was Morris Slocum telling.
Yes, that's correct. It
He
was
holds a right to, he didn't rule out us going in alone.
Doesn't rule out, he didn't say we were.
with Mr. Gelbra.
What I think you may be referring to there is that NATO is certainly looking into the situation in Kosovo, and as you're aware from several weeks ago, they are continuing to draw up a range of options for consideration on what might be done in that area. But the way you've characterized it there, we, the United States, is not preparing to do anything in Kosovo militarily, independent of this NATO planning. And the NATO planning is just that, planning.
And the last one, Captain, the American unit was sent to the region of southeast Turkey, namely, if I remember well, SEAL, S-E-A-L, where there is a war going by the Turkish military against PKK Kurdish guerrillas, is in violation, they say, of the War Powers Act, which prohibits the sending of American troops into a war zone without specific congressional authorization. Is it correct then?
I think what you're probably referring to is one of what we call the JSET training missions. And this one that took place in, excuse me, in Turkey involved about 10 military personnel. It was, as all of our JSET training missions, an approved mission, and those are put together because they provide an opportunity for the familiarization of the U.S. participants in either the terrain of the area, in interfacing with their counterparts in the host military unit, in language familiarization, in operating with the host military unit in the environment of the host country. Yeah.
On Iraq, Mike, the IAEA yesterday at the United Nations Security Council said that they had found no evidence that Iraq has nuclear weapons, but the agency said that Iraq's failure to account for key nuclear equipment and technical blueprints leaves open the possibility that it has hidden the necessary expertise and material for some future use. Does the United States the Department of Defense have a concern that Iraq should come forward and show the evidence to the IAEA?
Well, we have said, along with the IAEA, for years that that Iraq needs to come forward with all information regarding their weapons of mass destruction, and we continue to hold that belief. I think the IAEA, their report, which was presented yesterday to the Security Council, indicated that that they did not have the full range of information that they had been seeking to understand the full extent of the Iraqi nuclear program and whether there is a residue of that program still in existence in Iraq.
So the U.S. indeed would call upon Iraq to substantiate with evidence their alleged scuttling of their weapons. Is that
Indeed,
right?
the entire United Nations has been calling on Iraq to provide that kind of information.
Any worrisome troop movements in Iraq lately?
What I can tell you on that is that there have been some troop movements. This is primarily a garrison rotation of troops. As far as we can tell right now, is not a change. This is not the first time we have seen such a rotation.
The fact that it is coming within days of when they invaded Kuwait is not a concern to you? It's a normal time when they do the rotation?
I think that the best way to say that is that we certainly watch the situation in Iraq very carefully, and we will continue to do so.
What is the American force structure in that neck of the woods these days?
U.S. Forces there number just under 20,000. I think in the last week or so, the aircraft carrier Abraham Lincoln reported on the scene. We have 14 ships in the area. We have about 165 aircraft, and including the Lincoln.
So you have less than 100 land base. Well under 100 land base.
Is that correct? That's correct. It's 165 aircraft, which include air-to-air, air-to-ground, and dual-role aircraft.
Could you give some indication of these troop movements that you've detected?
I think the best way is what I said before. It's a garrison rotation of troops, which we have seen in the past, and beyond that, I would not care to characterize it.
Where this took place? What areas?
I'm not going to specify. Yeah.
I'm working on an explanatory, so if we return to the adultery and fraternizations just very briefly. And the shorthand for the problem that would be caused by these activities is always, it affects good order and discipline. Could you restate how the private behavior of consenting adults affects good order and discipline, just in clear, non-technical language?
Well, both on the good order and discipline and on the adultery issue, it has to do with non-professional relationships that exist between individuals. I think anybody who's ever been in the military realizes that if there is a perception that individuals are getting favorable treatment because of an off-duty relationship, that can destroy unit cohesion. It can certainly affect morale, and it is for that reason that we constantly pay a lot of attention to just that kind of an issue. And that was the purpose that this whole study was launched, bearing in mind that we need to be very clear, we need to be consistent in the way that we apply these good order and discipline rules and regulations. Yeah.
We talked a lot about adultery before, but we didn't talk much about fraternization, which is what your last answer goes to a bit. As I understand it, the services have very, very different policies on that, which the Army allowing a great deal of non-professional relationships that would not be permissible in the other services. How do you plan to address that?
Well, I don't want to kind of salami slice or even preview what we're going to end up with in the future, but I can promise you that this issue of fraternization has been addressed by those who have been talking to a wide range of individuals over the past year, and that when the final package is put together, we'll provide that to you. If you go back and look at the release that was put out on the 7th of June in 1997, and if you look at the transcript of the backgrounder that was done then, I think you get some sense of the extent to which the panel members were going to consult so that they could come to a fuller understanding of what the issues were and how military people in particular viewed this issue.
But isn't the ultimate goal to come up with a system where there's equality, sort of equal treatment across the DoD?
The overall goal is to ensure that we continue with the finest military in the world. And the Secretary has said on many occasions that what he is looking for is a consistent application of the policy. Yes?
Any indication when Iran might test the Shahab-3 again?
I have nothing for you on that. I'm not going to even take that one.
Thank you.
You're welcome.